I want you to imagine something for a second.
Okay.
Picture yourself lying in a hospital bed. You know the environment, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The fluorescent lights overhead are just a little too bright. The air conditioning is a bit too cold. And you're surrounded by this fortress of glowing screens and quietly beeping machines.
Right. It's a very specific vibe.
Yeah. And for most of us, that room feels like, the ultimate safety net. It's high-tech security. We look at those blinking monitors. We hear the rhythmic hum of the machinery, and we think, I am being monitored, like I am safe.
We are completely conditioned to trust that machinery. I mean, it represents precision, right? Mathematics, science. We just assume that because a computer is involved, human error has basically been engineered out of the equation entirely.
Right. But what if we've been looking at that room completely backward?
What do you mean?
Well, what if the greatest danger in that room isn't the illness that put you in the bed in the first place? What if the real danger is the fact that those very machines, the ones keeping you alive, blindly do exactly what they're told to do, even when they are told to do the wrong thing?
Wow. Yeah, that paradox of clinical technology is, well, it's the core of what we are unpacking today. We're looking at a structural, deeply entrenched problem in patient safety, and it lives right at the boundary between a human being and a machine.
Exactly. And to explore this, we are taking a deep dive into a really fascinating press release from 2026 from a company called EON AI Ventures.
Right, the Situation Room announcement.
Yes, they just announced this new product called the Healthcare Situation Room. So the mission of our deep dive today is to pull this source material apart, and understand how this new work intelligence product aims to solve a critical yet somehow entirely overlooked obligation in medicine.
Which is stopping medical device errors before they ever reach the patient. It represents a pretty profound shift in how the industry approaches medical training. I mean, historically, when a mistake happens at the bedside, the immediate instinct of hospital administration has been to, blame the clinician.
Right, like, oh, the nurse wasn't paying attention.
Exactly. But this source material forces us to realize that the interface itself, like the way the machine asks for information, is often the actual hazard.
To really wrap our heads around this, I kept thinking about medical devices, like ventilators, or those infusion pumps that drip medication into an IV.
Right, the volumetric pumps.
Yeah, those. I kept thinking about like a literal genie from a bottle.
Oh, a genie, like granting your exact wish, regardless of the consequences.
Yes. Think about every story you've ever heard about a genie. If you accidentally ask for the slightly wrong thing, the genie doesn't, pause and say, hey, did you mean this instead? Because that seems dangerous.
Right, there's no common sense check.
No. It just gives you the disastrous result you literally asked for. And an infusion pump operates the exact same way. It doesn't know what liquid is actually reaching your veins.
Right.
It doesn't know if it's a powerful heart medication that needs to go in super slowly or just like basic saline. It only knows the number that a tired human just typed into its screen.
The device confirms the entered value, not the actual clinical reality at the bedside, and that is precisely the danger.
Yeah.
So to understand why EON built the Situation Room, we have to kind of transition from that comforting illusion of hospital safety into the stark, documented reality of what is called the clinician-machine interface.
And let's look at the actual scale of this problem, because letting the data speak for itself is honestly shocking.
It really is.
The press release notes that between 2005 and 2009, the FDA received roughly 56,000 adverse event reports tied to infusion pumps alone.
56,000. And if you break that math down, I mean, that is roughly 38 severe device errors being reported every single day for 4 years straight.
God, 38 a day?
And that is on just one type of machine in the hospital.
Just the pumps.
Okay.
And it led to 87 recalls. 14 of those were Class I recalls. And just to contextualize that for you, the listener Class I is the FDA's most severe category.
Right. It's not a minor glitch.
No, it's the classification reserved for problems that have a reasonable probability of causing serious injury or death. This entire period was known as the FDA Infusion Pump Improvement Initiative back in 2010.
And the source points out that this isn't just like a historical footnote. We didn't fix this in 2010 and just move on.
We really didn't.
Every single year, the ECRI Institute puts out its top 10 health technology hazards list, and the exact same families of failure just keep returning.
It's crazy.
Their 2025 list still cites supplemental oxygen fire risks, dangerously low default alarm limits, and infusion line hazards. The problem is just incredibly persistent.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if this is a known hazard with massive FDA recalls dating back, what, 20 years?
Yeah, 2 decades.
And the exact same hazards are making the top 10 lists every single year, how on earth are medical professionals currently being trained to avoid it? Surely hospitals have a rigorous, intensive protocol for something that kills people this regularly.
You would think so. Regulators and accreditors do require competence in device safety and human factors. But the grim reality highlighted in EON's documentation is that this required training is typically just a forgettable slide deck.
A slide deck.
Yeah, hospitals treat it as cheap compliance. You just check a box. It's usually given to new nurses or young residents during onboarding in some dark room while they are completely overwhelmed with paperwork.
A 2D slide deck to prevent lethal errors. That just seems wildly inadequate, especially
Mhm.
when you consider the terrifying signature of this specific type of error.
Right, the silent nature of it.
Yeah, because if you, the listener, think about a medical emergency on TV, you probably picture, like, alarms blaring, doctors running, a clear visual sign that something is terribly wrong. But this problem, it is entirely quiet.
The clinician appears to be doing the task perfectly. They walk up to the machine, they push the buttons, and they walk away.
Right.
But maybe a dangerous default setting was left unchanged in some buried submenu. Or maybe the units of measurement were read the way the last pump displayed them, but
This is a different model.
exactly. The device error is committed quietly. The number on the screen looks totally normal.
And by the time the harm actually surfaces, it's way too late. The press release mentions things like an occlusion alarm coming too late. And just to clarify for anyone not familiar, occlusion means there's a physical blockage in the IV line, right? Like a kinked tube or a closed clamp.
Correct. The fluid basically cannot reach the patient. So the pump's motor is pushing, pressure is building up inside the plastic tubing, but nothing is going into the vein.
Wow.
And if the alarm limit for that pressure is set incorrectly on the interface, the machine might silently fail to deliver life-saving medication for hours before the pressure alarm finally triggers.
So you walk in and find an empty IV bag that should have lasted all night, or an occlusion alarm that didn't go off, or, tragically, a sudden drop in the patient's heart rate.
Exactly.
The hospital worker might be green, as the document says, but giving them a slide deck to prevent an invisible hazard is a fundamental system failure.
Which brings us directly to how EON is trying to fundamentally change the way failure is taught. They're trying to make it visceral and experiential through the healthcare situation room, which they describe as this sort of Netflix-style catalog of real medical device use errors.
The pilot library has 30 cases, and it spans a massive clinical footprint: infusion, medication, airway and ventilation, monitoring and alarms, cardiac and resuscitation.
It even covers the biomed layer that runs the back-end software.
Yeah. And what makes this catalog so compelling is that they aren't inventing, like, spooky what-if scenarios. Every single case is grounded entirely in public record.
Transparency is a really crucial distinction here. Each card in this catalog is sourced directly to the FDA, the Joint Commission, the Institute for Safe Medication Practices, or ECRI.
That's a lot of data.
It is, and they flag unverified user-submitted FDA IOD reports explicitly separating raw user complaints from adjudicated proven findings. Furthermore, manufacturers are only named if a public authority has already named them on the record.
Right, they're being very careful with the accusations. To anchor this entire catalog, they cite one of the most infamous historical examples of software failure, which is the Therac 25. The document brings this up as the ultimate historical proof that the interface itself is the hazard.
The Therac 25 was a radiation therapy machine used between 1985 and 1987. Due to flaws in the software interface, it caused at least 6 massive overdose accidents and 3 deaths.
It's a tragic story.
It is, but the mechanism of how it failed is what makes it so relevant to EON's catalog today.
Let's break that mechanism down.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just a random spark or mechanical glitch. It was this terrifying mismatch between the human operator's muscle memory and the machine's processing speed.
Exactly. The operators of the Therac 25 got so fast at typing in the setup commands that they literally outpaced the software's ability to process the changes safely.
They were just too quick for the computer.
Right. An operator would accidentally type X for the lethal high-power X-ray mode, instantly realize their mistake, use the up arrow to fix it, and quickly type E for the safe electron mode.
And because they typed it so fast, the computer screen updated. It showed the operator the safe electron mode right there on the interface.
But the machine's actual hardware suffered from a massive lag. The physical shielding was still locked in the lethal high-power mode.
Oh, wow.
So the operator trusted the screen, hit enter, and delivered a fatal overdose. The screen lied because the software architecture just couldn't handle the speed of expert human data entry.
That is the literal definition of the interface is the hazard. And EON leans into this with a signature card in their catalog that completely reframes the problem. It's called Same Task, Different Device.
Oh, this one is fascinating.
They take the exact same medical order, but they have the clinician program it on 3 unbranded pumps where the screens flip the meaning of the exact same keystrokes.
It isolates the human factors mechanism perfectly. It intentionally causes mode confusion and defeats cognitive safeguards just to prove a point.
Think about the last time you, the listener, drove a rental car. You know that feeling when you reach for the windshield wipers and accidentally hit the turn signal?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Your muscle memory does one thing, but the machine responds differently. Now imagine you're doing that, but instead of wiping away rain, you're injecting adrenaline into a patient in an intensive care unit.
The stakes are just a bit higher.
Just a bit. The inconsistency between devices doing the exact same task is a massive structural hazard.
And it is a hazard that single device training like a generic slide deck for pump A completely ignores. You are totally unprepared for the reality that pump B right down the hall in the pediatric wing uses the same buttons to mean something completely different.
But if EON is building this detailed, public record-backed catalog of real-world fatal errors, I mean, there's a huge ethical risk here. Simulating real fatalities could so easily cross the line into being macabre or ghoulish or, violating patient privacy.
It is a very fine line to walk. But EON addresses this by building absolute patient dignity into the product from the ground up. The consequence of the error is shown exclusively through the device and the environment.
Meaning you never actually see a patient in these simulations.
Never a patient, never a body, zero protected health information. You only see the lying display on the screen, you hear the silenced alarm, or you see a flatline trace on a monitor, or you just see an empty bed.
An empty bed. I mean, that visual alone is profoundly more effective than a bullet point on a slide deck telling a nurse to check your inputs.
It really is. It is designed to carry the emotional weight of the aftermath without exploiting the real people involved in these historical cases.
That's a great way to handle it.
And technically, to make these simulations actually function, the library sits on what EON calls their work intelligence flywheel. The press release breaks this down into 3 parts: Genesis, Universal, and Live.
Let's translate those terms because on paper, they just sound like tech buzzwords. What is this flywheel actually doing?
Think of it as a highly advanced video game engine built specifically for hospital physics. Genesis maps out the specific steps the clinician takes. Universal translates that work so the system understands the clinical goal.
Okay, got it. And Live.
Live is the physics engine running the simulation in the background.
So when you say Live runs the physics, you mean if I program the simulated pump to deliver fluid way too fast, the system mathematically calculates the exact moment the virtual IV line would burst or trigger a pressure alarm.
Precisely. It calculates fluid dynamics, pressure limits, and timing in real time. And this links directly into EON's Healthcare Living Library, which covers 50 equipment classes based on GMDN and UMDNS standards.
I'm really glad you brought up those acronyms, GMDN and UMDNS. For those of us outside the clinical engineering department, what exactly are those?
They are essentially the universal translation dictionaries for medical equipment globally. They categorize every single medical device into specific functional classes. So a volumetric infusion pump belongs to a specific standardized class, regardless of which corporation actually manufactured it.
But wait, logistically, if they're simulating all these different devices across all these scenarios, does this mean they have to build a completely different pump simulation for every single wing of a hospital?
What do you mean?
Like an ICU version, a pediatric version, a surgical version? That scale seems, impossible for a software company to maintain.
If they modeled it by location, it would absolutely be impossible. But the genius of their architecture is that EO models the devices, not hospitals.
Oh, why?
Yeah, because they use those universal dictionaries, a single simulated infusion pump class can span an ICU, a med-surg floor, and a neonatal ICU seamlessly. When you open a case in the catalog, it links you directly to the exact device class whose interface the story turns on.
So these aren't just flat 2D flashcards you click through on a web browser. These case cards are doorways to 3D device twins.
Exactly.
They're playable missions where a clinician can actually step in and run the exact procedure
Yeah.
a real medical team skipped or botched in the past. They could push the wrong button and watch the physics engine unfold that silent error in real time.
It provides the clinician the rare opportunity to feel the trap of a bad interface before they ever touch a real patient. But EON recognizes that practicing in a calm, controlled simulation center is, well, it's only half the battle.
Right, because what happens during an actual 12-hour shift?
Yeah.
You're exhausted, you're rushing between 3 different critical patients, and real alarms are going off. The simulation room is gone.
Right. The situation room is really just the front door. The ultimate application of all this data is an in-hand co-pilot they call Field IQ. It takes the training out of the simulation center and carries it directly onto the real ward, right to the point of care at the bedside.
Field IQ recognizes a medical device on site and then runs an intelligent visual checklist. The press release actually compares it to a test pilot running a checklist before a flight, which makes total sense.
It really does.
We expect pilots to use mandatory checklists before flying a plane. We should absolutely expect the same rigor for a machine injecting powerful drugs into a human heart.
It brings the aviation safety model into healthcare. Field IQ asks control questions at the exact moment they matter most. It might prompt the clinician and say, did you confirm the units? Or is the return electrode seated properly? And it bases those questions on the historical public record of how that specific device typically fails.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. I look at this from a practical behavioral standpoint. I get that the aviation safety model is the gold standard, but practically speaking, if an alarm is blaring and a patient is crashing in a code blue, is a nurse really going to stop, pull out a device, and click through a digital checklist?
It's a fair question.
Won't that feel like intense micromanagement that just slows down emergency care?
That is a very real behavioral hurdle, and forcing new workflows during a medical crisis often backfires. But EON provides a powerful counter-argument for why clinicians will actually want to use this, even in high-stress situations.
Why is that?
Because Field IQ doesn't just prompt you with questions, it documents every single step you take.
Okay, so it creates a paper trail. But how does that solve the micromanagement feeling?
Because by documenting that the checklist was followed, the units were confirmed, the alarms were set correctly,
Yeah.
it creates an immutable record. The press release puts it this way: it documents every step so the work can never be questioned.
Oh, wow. So it protects the clinician from blame just as fiercely as it protects the patient from harm.
Exactly. If something goes wrong with the patient's physiology, no one can point the finger at the nurse and question the integrity of how they set up the machine. The AI logged the reality of the work at the bedside.
It fundamentally changes the dynamic. It goes from feeling like a boss looking over your shoulder to being like a bodyguard for your medical license.
It is a systemic solution to a systemic problem. It acknowledges that human beings, no matter how skilled, well-trained, or well-intentioned, will always be vulnerable to bad design and confusing interfaces.
This entire shift is so necessary. Moving away from the outdated model of blaming the green worker and finally fixing the interface. Whether you are a healthcare professional working on the floor or you're just a patient like the one we imagined at the start of this deep dive, lying in that hospital bed, trusting the system, it is vital to understand this transition.
It is.
The illusion of the flawless machine is fading. It's being replaced by tools that actually account for human reality.
And as we wrap up this analysis, there is a broader implication here that extends far beyond hospital walls. We have just explored how a simple digital interface on a medical pump can cause silent chaos and fatal harm just by flipping a keystroke's meaning. But software is eating the world in every single industry.
It really is. Everything has a screen now.
So I challenge you to look at the interfaces you use every day in your own profession. How often do you place blind trust in the number on the screen over the physical reality in front of your eyes? Where is the silent error waiting in your daily workflow?
It's a really sobering thought. Because whether it's a financial spreadsheet you're blindly trusting, a piece of heavy machinery, or a medical genie granting a wish you didn't actually mean to make, the machine is only as safe as the human interface translating your command. Keep a close eye on your screens, everyone. We will catch you on the next deep dive.